Well, earlier today, the House Judiciary Committee held a hearing in New York City to offer those affected by violent crime in the Rotten Apple a chance to tell their stories and discuss whether the policies of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg are worsening crime in their city. Well, join me now to share his thoughts on the hearing is Congressman Nathaniel Moran, who serves on 3 House committees, including the Judiciary Committee. He has also had his own civil law practice for the last 2 decades. He serves as the representative for the 1st Congressional District of the Lone Star State. Congressman Moran, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
So can you share with our audience what came out of today's hearing?
Sure. It was quite the fireworks during the hearing today, and I'm so glad that we did this in Manhattan, because it's not just about New York City. It's really about the leftist social policies across the country and all of the big cities that are driving our law enforcement to seek other careers, that are supporting criminals rather than victims, that are taking us down a path that is not the path that supports the rule of law.
Anything that you discovered today? I mean, I know you've been tracking this and been watching it, but I mean, there's a reason to go there, be present, listen to people's stories. Anything that you discovered that was new there today?
Yeah, I tell you what was astounding to me as I listened to the testimony. When you look at how Alvin Bragg is running the Manhattan DA's office, it is amazing that there has not been an uprising by the citizens there in Manhattan, because he's taken, when you look at 2019 versus 2022, he's taken felonies that are committed. He's charging 35% less felonies across the board. And then what's left over out of that bucket, he's reducing about half of those to misdemeanors. But what was most astounding to me is when you look at the conviction rates, 2019 conviction rates for both misdemeanors and felonies was about 68% for the Manhattan DA's office. When you look at the statistics now, for misdemeanors, the conviction rate is 29%. For felonies, it's just above 50%. That means 1 out of every 2 cases that even get to trial, he's unsuccessful at. Now, what that tells you is if you start from the very beginning to the end, about 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people that commit a felony is actually going to be convicted of that felony at the end of the day. And that's astounding.
Congressman, I played this clip earlier in the program. On Friday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams was on CNN this morning with Don Lemon, trying to, I think, cut the Republicans off at the pass, talking about this hearing today. I'm going to play this clip and get you to respond to it. Clip number 10, please.
How concerned are you about this perception that cities like New York are dangerous?
Well, we should be clear that New York City is the safest big city in America.
Congressman, am I missing something?
Yeah, I think we're all missing something. That's like saying you won the loser's bracket in a tournament. And when you're comparing yourself, again, against all of these democratically run cities across the nation, even if you're going to suggest that New York City is the safest of the largest cities, that's like saying, well, we're the safest of the most unsafe cities in America, because that's exactly what's going on. From Philadelphia to Chicago, even in my home state, where you see it in Houston and Austin, where leftist policies, where you're looking more at social justice rather than actual justice. You're looking at all these social agendas from the left. Instead of supporting our law enforcement, it's creating a crime epidemic. And it's a result of them simply ignoring the victims and saying, we're going to protect the criminals.
What's it going to take for the citizens to say, you know what, enough of this George Soros-funded type of justice that is letting the criminals go free and politicizing the judiciary system like we see there in New York with, letting all the criminals go that are killing people, but then use that as a platform to go after their political opponents?
Tony, it's going to take more of the voices of the mothers that we heard from today during the hearing. There were some mothers there today and some wives and individuals that have been harmed by these crimes, one of which spoke out ardently about the fact that she had left the Democratic Party as a result of this, that she could never get a call back from Alvin Bragg on her the case of her son that was murdered. And as a result of that, having seen the process run by the Democrats, she said, I can no longer associate myself with these Democratic policies and the party itself because they've turned their back on me. And I think you're going to see more and more of that across America where, at some point, when you're in Chicago or New York City and you got the city and the county and the state all run by Democrats, you can no longer blame Republicans. You can no longer blame guns for this. That happened today quite a bit, too. The Democrats really only focused on two things, and that was Donald Trump and trying to get more gun control. But at the end of the day, they had to admit, and the witnesses had to admit, that when it came to the guns that were involved in the crimes in New York City, these were guns in the hands of criminals. They were already breaking gun laws. And when they say, well, we want more gun laws on the books, well, the gun laws on the books now need to be enforced by the Manhattan DA before he asks for more. If he won't enforce those currently on the books, there doesn't need to be any more restriction.
I want to go to the issue of the district attorney there filing a lawsuit against House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan and his claim of, quote, a transparent campaign to intimidate and to attack his office's case against former President Donald Trump. Now, when I was in the legislature, back in Louisiana, we went out into the field. I think it's a very productive use of the time because there's a lot of people you heard from today would never make their way to Washington, D.C. You usually have the professionals here that are seeing you. You hear from the real people. I think this is a great idea for the committees to get out and go into the communities that are affected by this. But we see now the DA politicizing this as the chairman has taken this into New York. How do you respond to that?
Well, of course, that's what they want to do, is to say we're politicizing this because they don't want to deal with the substance of the matters at hand. It was very, very poignant to hear those victims' testimonies today in their city. And you're right, most of them couldn't or wouldn't travel to Washington, D.C. to tell that story. The other thing that came up today was the crowd that was there behind the witnesses, in between the press and the witnesses. There was a large crowd, and there was no doubt they were there to let Alvin Bragg know they were not happy about how he's bringing about law and order in Manhattan. They were not people from Washington, D.C. They were not Republicans. They were citizens of New York City that were sick and tired and frankly fed up of the decisions he's been making since he got into office.
Congressman, final question for you. Where's the committee? Where are you going next?
There's lots of places to go, and I hope we do have some more of these hearings, particularly on support for law enforcement and enforcing the rule of law and standing firm against criminals in this country. I certainly wouldn't mind if we made a trip down to Houston or Austin. There's lots of stories to tell down there, but let's get out in the country and do some more of this. It's very effective for these stories to be told by the victims of leftist propagandists that really are pushing a political agenda and are not concerned with the victims of crime.
I agree with you 100%, and it's good to give them a voice. Congressman Moran, thanks so much for taking time to join us today. Always great to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tony.